Week one of college football is just notorious for turning every beautifully crafted preseason prediction into absolute rubble.
It really is.
It's the ultimate moment of data volatility. We've been immersed in the week one recap from the YAR Sports Network, and we're stacking up all the ranking shifts, the explosive game results, and, the big individual performances.
It's pure information overload. But that volatility is exactly what we're diving into. Week one is, well, it's maybe the most critical data point of the entire season.
Why is that?
Because it's the first time voters and analysts see these teams against real competitive opponents, often outside their usual conference schedule.
Right.
So that means you get these seismic adjustments, and those adjustments really set the narrative for the whole fall.
And for you, the curious learner, we're cutting through all that noise.
Yeah.
Our mission here is to pull out the absolute essential nuggets of knowledge.
The rankings logic, the implications of the scores.
And the proof, the concrete proof of performance that defines this early part of the season. We need to figure out which teams were underrated, overrated, and what this new offensive standard looks like. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We have to start with the rankings.
Yeah.
Because the top two spots completely flipped.
Yeah, that shift at the top was the big headline. Penn State, which, started the season at number 2, they played cleanly enough to grab that coveted number 1 spot.
Which was enough to push Texas, the preseason number 1, down a position to number 2.
Exactly.
Well, wait, let's stop there for a second. That logic feels a little counterintuitive to me.
How so?
Texas played Ohio State and won 48-29. That is a dominant 19-point victory over a huge contender.
Oh, a perennial contender, absolutely.
Meanwhile, Penn State won by only 10 points against Tennessee, 44-34. So how does a team slide after a win like that?
That's a great question, and it gets right to the heart of voter psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Texas didn't slide because they failed. They slid because the voters rewarded Penn State for what they saw as stronger execution and potential, even with a smaller margin of victory.
So Texas sliding from 1 to 2 instead of, say, falling further actually suggests they still have a lot of goodwill.
A massive amount. Voters acknowledge their dominant win over Ohio State and still see them as an elite championship caliber team.
Wow.
Penn State just, they made a stronger argument for that top spot in week 1.
Okay, so Texas maintained strength, but Penn State leveraged their win more effectively. That's the kind of subtlety we have to track.
Right.
But the real story isn't just that one spot swap. It's the teams that used week 1 as a springboard. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the teams who jumped dramatically.
We'll absolutely have to start with Miami.
Oh, yeah.
They delivered the most seismic shift of the week, rocketing up 9 spots from number 12 all the way to number 3.
9 spots.
To jump that high that early, you need more than just a win. You need a statement win against a highly recognizable national brand.
And they were not alone in rearranging that top 5. Clemson climbed 3 spots.
Yep, moving from number 7 up to number 4.
And Illinois also made a very strong statement, rounding out the new top 5 by rising 5 places from number 10.
Which means 3 of the top 5 teams are in completely different spots than they were just, 7 days ago.
The board is a mess.
In the best way possible. And beyond that top tier, you see these significant momentum shifts for teams like Texas A&M, Arizona State, and Michigan.
What does that signal?
It often signals that the voters just severely underrated their talent coming into the season, and week 1 was their chance to prove that initial low ranking was a mistake.
That initial lack of consensus is also proven by the 6 teams that cracked the top 25 for the first time this season.
The true dark horses.
Exactly. We saw Auburn, Louisville, USC, Ole Miss, Georgia Tech, and Nebraska all fight their way in. It just shows that preseason polling is so often based on reputation.
But early performance can completely override it. It also gives us a clear look at how volatile the back half of those rankings really is. Teams that were maybe number 26 or 27 have now established themselves as legitimate threats.
All right, let's pivot from these abstract numbers to the concrete evidence on the field. We need to connect those massive ranking changes directly to the scoreboard.
Because those leaps required some serious offensive fireworks.
We're talking statement wins and absolute offensive explosions.
And Miami's leap to number 3 becomes completely justifiable when you look at their week 1 result. They didn't just win.
No.
They embarrassed Notre Dame, winning 49-10. A 39-point margin against a major program is an overwhelming declaration of dominance.
That's the kind of scoreline that forces voters to pay attention.
It does.
And that high-octane theme continued across the entire slate. Offense was just king. Look at the sheer volume of points scored in some of the highest stakes games.
Like Florida State shocking the system, topping Alabama in that shootout.
51 to 35. Just
Right.
stunning.
That FSU-Alabama game is critical, not just for the winner, but for what 51 points does to the reputation of an Alabama defense.
Right. Historically, they just don't allow those kinds of numbers.
Never. It suggests a potential shift in the defensive balance of power, or maybe that FSU's offense is just that lethal.
We also saw Texas A&M put up big numbers in their win over Georgia, 44-28.
Another big one.
And Auburn, one of our new entrants to the rankings, had a commanding, almost embarrassing win over Arkansas, 49-14, when a team that wasn't ranked puts up 49 points in an opener.
They are demanding recognition.
They really are.
And we shouldn't overlook what I'll call the quiet dominators.
Yeah.
Teams that might not have made the biggest ranking jumps, but established clear dominance.
Liku.
Missouri defeated Indiana 35-14. Texas Tech handled South Carolina 40-28. And UCLA beat Utah 38-13.
So these aren't just wins. These are convincing margins against Power 5 opponents.
Exactly. They signal that these teams are fundamentally sound. If you're a curious learner, you need to watch these teams because they're quietly building very strong resumes.
Okay, so we've established the theme of offensive explosions, but as we noted, not every top team got that kind of dominant margin.
No, not at all.
Let's pivot from those blowouts to the strategic battles, the grinders, and the close calls. This is where we learn about resilience versus, potential weakness.
Exactly. If the blowout wins tell us which teams are explosive, the close calls tell us which teams are tough.
Which brings us right back to the new #1 team, Penn State. Their win, 44-34 over Tennessee, was a 10-point margin.
Right.
Considering the 39-point margin Miami generated for their massive jump, doesn't Penn State's closer victory raise some doubts about their claim to #1?
That's a fair question.
Is this just reputation voting overriding what we saw in the game tape?
What's fascinating here is the voters are rewarding the win, not necessarily the margin of victory. In a sport defined by close rivalry games, winning a tough, high-scoring contest by 10 points against a respectable opponent like Tennessee, well, that often signals more sustainable strength than a 50-point blowout against a team of lesser quality.
So they were tested.
Voters believe Penn State was tested, and they survived. That survival is interpreted as strength and resilience.
So the ranking logic is valuing the strength of the competition more heavily than the magnitude of the win. That's a key distinction for our listener.
It absolutely is. And we see that same dynamic with Clemson.
Who jumped from 7 to 4.
Yep, despite only edging LSU 27-20. That ranking jump suggests the voters gave them significant credit for winning a tightly fought, pressure-filled game. They proved they could handle a strong SEC challenge.
And we can't forget Michigan. They climbed in the rankings after beating Florida 49-39. It was high scoring, but that 10-point margin, it feels like a relatively narrow escape compared to the other master classes we saw.
It does. If Michigan is going to sustain that climb, they need to show they can put away quality opponents more decisively.
And tying it all back to our new entries.
Georgia Tech.
Exactly. One of the 6 teams to crack the top 25, and they only managed to edge Colorado 29-26.
A 3-point margin is not a statement of dominance. It's a statement of survival. While they are ranked, their position is incredibly precarious.
So their ranking is more about the weakness of the teams they replaced than their own overwhelming strength.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, so we have the ranking shifts, we have the scores, but the narrative of week 1 is truly written by the individuals who put up those numbers.
For sure.
We need to take a statistical deep dive into the players of the week. This is that concrete proof of elite performance.
Let's start on the offensive side. And the irony here is just rich. The star performance came from a player whose team, Alabama, lost 51-35.
Ryan Williams.
Ryan Williams. You have to recognize an elite performance even in defeat.
His stat line is just stunning in its efficiency. He had a gargantuan 243 yards and 3 touchdowns on only 4 catches.
That's not a typo.
4 catches! He was averaging over 60 yards every time the ball touched his hands. Plus, he added a 21-yard rush.
That kind of yardage on so few receptions is what defines a true field flipper. He wasn't catching dink-and-dunk passes.
No.
He was turning short throws into long touchdowns, or just gaining massive yardage after the catch. It's an unsustainable average, but it tells you that even against a top defense, if you give Ryan Williams space, he breaks the entire game plan.
It also gives you insight into the Alabama side of the equation. If one player can generate 243 yards of offense, yet the team still loses by 16 points,
It highlights a deep foundational struggle on the defensive side of the ball.
that even generational offensive talent can't overcome.
Precisely. Now, if Williams represents that offensive firepower, Ball State's Joey Stemler is the definition of defensive disruption.
The defensive player of the week.
And his stats are the perfect summary of defensive leverage. Let's break down his complete stat line because it goes so far beyond just high tackle numbers.
Right. Stemler had 10 total tackles, which is great volume.
But he added 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, forced a fumble, and crucially, recovered 2 fumbles.
2 recoveries.
This raises an important question. Well, maybe more of a point. Stemler wasn't just patrolling. He was generating chaos and reversing momentum.
How so?
The forced fumble and the 2 recoveries show he was directly responsible for 3 turnovers in one game. In football, that is gold.
Yeah.
He wasn't just cleaning up plays, he was breaking down the offense's ability to execute, forcing errors, and giving the ball back to his team. He dictated the flow of the game, proving that true defensive value lies in disruption, not just participation.
So if we look back at everything we've synthesized from the YA Sports Network sources, the key themes for Week 1 are pretty clear. We had a massive shakeup at the top of the rankings, where Penn State leveraged their win against a tough opponent to jump Texas. We saw the shocking dominance of teams like Miami, who just demanded recognition through margin of victory.
And we saw it even in the face of all these offensive explosions. Individual excellence like Ryan Williams' efficiency and Joey Stemler's defensive grit can still shine through. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Week 1 proved that offense has fundamentally redefined the standard of high-level college football. Look at scores like 51-35 and 49-39.
The threshold for what constitutes a high-scoring game has just been raised.
It has. And the question moving forward is whether defensive coordinators across the nation can adapt quickly enough to stop this relentless pace. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see 50 points as the new norm.
It's the definition of volatility, and it's why we love Week 1. And that leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to chew on this week, based purely on the ranking logic we discussed.
Okay.
Penn State moved to number 1 with a 10-point win over a perceived quality opponent. Miami jumped 9 spots to number 3 with a 39-point blowout over a major program. If you had to bet on which team maintains their position higher come mid-season, which team's ranking jump feels more validated by their Week 1 performance when you weigh opponent quality versus margin of victory, that's your assignment for the road. We'll see you for the next deep dive.